السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
السلام عليكم.
وعليكم
مرحبا.
السلام ورحمة الله.
عليكم السلام.
ما شاء الله، كيف حالكم؟
الحمد لله يا شيخ، وأنت؟
الحمد لله. كيف حال ويكندكم؟
It was good. الحمد لله.
Okay, good. Okay, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحابته أجمعين. أما بعد, so let's have some takeaways. Some takeaways from last lesson.
One thing we were talking about last time was that there's 3 types of visions that a person can see in their sleep. The first is hadith an-nafs, which is just like things your mind makes up. Then waswas al-shaytan, which is like dreams from shaytan. And then the last is ru'ya min Allah, which are dreams from Allah, and they have like an actual explanation. So the ones we see in the story of Prophet Yusuf are all ru'ya min Allah, because they're all interpreted and have a meaning.
Excuse me, what was the last thing you said?
So the dreams that we see in the story of Prophet Yusuf are all ru'ya, because they have an interpretation which we see Prophet Yusuf giving.
Yeah. Plus, we also know that ru'ya al-anbiya yani wahy. What the prophets see in their dreams is wahy. Okay. What else? Great.
We learned of the da'wah of Yusuf, and we said that he was giving da'wah to like the lowly class while he was in prison and they were in prison. And when he talks to them, he addresses them with
what's that?
Oh, I said he was the da'wah of Yusuf, and he was talking to people in lowly class that were in prison with him. And when he addresses them, he calls them ya sahibay, like my 2 companions, not just with like endearing terms. And then when he starts inviting them to Islam, he makes them think. He gives them a logical equation, so that they can come to their own conclusion, rather than just telling them right away.
Rather than presenting a conclusion, let them formulate a conclusion based on their own thought process, which is always a much better proposition, right?
Yes.
That's something you need to keep in mind for those of you who are parents, and those of you who are not, inshallah you will be. So you need to use that formulation for your kids, which is not the traditional way that parents talk to their kids, right? It used to be parents say do, don't, and kids would say sami'na wa ta'na. Now kids say why, right? Which is not bad or good. It could be either one, but whatever the case is, that's how it is. So not only kids, but everybody, you know. Okay, right. That's great. What else? Nothing else.
There's one more that I have. One on the verse when we talked about shaitan made him forget. We said there were 2 interpretations, that shaitan made the drink server forget to tell his master about Yusuf, or it's that shaitan made Yusuf forget to ask Allah for help. And those are 2 interpretations.
Oh, well, actually, you made him forget to remember or to mention his Rabb, and only keep in mind and only look towards connection and dependence on his Rabb, his Haqiqi Rabb. Which takes us to, can you call anyone a Rabb, by the way? If the meaning here, or the tafsir which is mentioned, that Rabbi, in other words, mentioning, referring to Aziz, is that jaiz? Can we use that title for anyone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not? What do you all say?
I'm not sure, but I think perhaps we can, like, for one, because it's using the Quran, and also like, but with like the with the point made that it's better not to, like, it's better to reserve these words for Allah, but it's not like prohibited.
Okay, so what is muqarrar, in the ulama, is that with idafa it's okay. For example, we say Rabbul Manzil. Particularly a woman, she's known as Rabbatul Manzil, because she's the one that, from tarbiyah. She's the one that looks after and, nurtures the house and looks after it, takes care of it. At least that's how it traditionally was. It may not be so much like that anymore, but hopefully with enlightened Muslims, it will remain like that, inshallah. Yeah, then households remain, mashallah, they remain, what should I say, the tartib and, the system, and what we say, what's the third I want for that? Salika. You understand the word salika? So we're seeing pretty much everybody here today. We have people here today who have not been here for some time. That's good to see. Hopefully we'll continue this trend, inshallah. Yeah, so when the ladies are looking after the house rather than, corporate offices and so forth, then houses, take on wonderful, wonderful forms, and wonderful things happen in those houses. But when the expertise and this special talent and efficacy which Allah Subhanahu has given women is exported out of the houses into the places of business, etc., or into the political arena, then that expertise is squandered in areas where it is not as critical. Is that understood or not? Yeah. So hopefully our ladies, inshallah, will not become beguiled by this trend, inshallah. Not to say that women cannot and should not, have their hand and contribute to the general, benefit of productivity in society, but the most critical aspect of that productivity would be within the auspices of their own homes. That's where it's most needed. And without that, we have a collapse. And when a collapse in the home, there's a collapse in the whole system. And the collapse, it will domino, right into the entirety of humanity. That's pretty much what we have now. Wallah mustaan. Okay, great. What else? Anything? Anything?
Sheikh, you asked me to look up Ar-Rayyan ibn Walid.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Which is was mentioned in the Jalalain.
Uh-huh.
I did not find anything in Jami' al-Tabari about his name.
Mm-hmm.
The Fath al-Bayan by Al-Sadiq Hassan Khan mentions his name, but doesn't inquire on how, like, where did he get the name from?
Or moreover, what kind of raises our eyebrows here is how does the king of Egypt, which are traditionally Coptics, Egyptians, who are not Arabs, they weren't initially Arabs, how does this fellow have an Arabic name? Right? That's the interesting thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it. I didn't find in the other ones his name.
Yeah. Did you happen to see Tanwir, the Ibn Ashur?
No, I did not go through at Tanwir.
Yeah, he pretty much he's good on these things. Pretty much he generally gives a tahqiq of things of this nature.
What category would the book would his book would be under? Would it be Ammahat, Amma, Mu'asara?
Yeah, it should be Mu'asara. because he is he recently passed away.
1 second.
Huh?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, his work is probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite tafsir. After we heard about it for a long time, but it wasn't available. And it's just recent, not too long ago, that actually came into print and has become available. And he bases a lot of his work on Ibn Atiyah, who was also a great professor previous. So he has good tahqiq. He also does very good tahqiq in terms of what is mentioned in previous books, like these Israeliyat, and he traces them back to their original source and sees where they come from and kind of assesses that. And Loghawi, I mean, his take on, Istidlal Loghawi and Ma'akhadh al-Loghawiyya is absolutely brilliant. It's about, and of course, he has the advantage, like any mutaakhir, all mutaakhirs, their advantage is they can build and benefit. They build upon and benefit from what those who came before them, obviously. So that's why we say al-fadl is-sabiq. So, the credit goes to the early ones because they're the ones who pioneered and opened up the door for the ladders. And if it had not been for the formers, the ladders, they never would have come or went, as they say. So, yeah. Okay. What else? All right. So that remains pending, huh? But mashallah. That's actually been something that I've been inquisitive about for a long time. I've never actually seen anyone mention that, strangely enough. Khair. Is it possible even that at one point there was actually people of Arabic descent that had control over Egypt? Is that possible? I don't know. I don't know that much about history to be able to have any clue about that. So anyway, so that remains a masala. As we said, it's not going to, as we said, it's not who and how, these people were and what they were. That's not really the objective, and that's why these things are not, dealt with at all in the text of Quran, because that's not what the Quran is about. Quran is about ibr, it's about durus, it's about life lessons. And so who, what his name and where it came from doesn't really have much of a life lesson. It's just an anomaly that would, it's nice to know. There's an academic shiba also, shiba. If you're hungry, then food fills that appetite, right? So the desire to know things is probably as much as a hunger as anything else, perhaps even more. If you're really hungry to know about certain things, then you would forget about your physical hunger. That happens also, right? So that has no end to it, and it's not all very healthy also, just having an appetite for a lot of information. So we need to prioritize. We said prioritize what information is essential, what information is going to actually translate into implementation, and what's going to translate into amal, which translates into true benefit and success, both the worlds. Okay, anyway. Yeah, what else?
You briefly mentioned the part of the ayah, inni taraktu millata qawmin la yu'minuna billahi wa hum bil akhirati hum kafirun. And so we talked about how is it that the prophet is saying that he left the faith of the people that do not believe, when indeed when we all know that he was never a part of that faith. And so we said that it was just to show the people who are in the Sijin that he is completely free and away from this other faith that the other people are pursuing right now.
Absolutely. So it doesn't mean that he was doing it. He was on that faith and then he realized it's wrong and then left it, like so many others, because Anbiya themselves on their ismat would require otherwise. So it's kind of like if you say, like, certain things were presented to me. Okay. So I left that one. not meaning that I ever had it, but it was presented to me, or it was there for the taking, but I didn't take it, I left it. Okay? So in that sense, wallahu alam, that might يمكن يقرب المسألة. Okay? What else? Anything else? Then we get started. Okay. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Who will read today?
I can start us off, ya Sheikh.
طيب. Who is that?
Dalen.
Yeah, go ahead.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. قال المؤلف جلال الدين السيوطي رحمة الله تعالى عليه. We're starting ayah 46, yes?
That's what I believe. Is that true, folks? I tend to forget where we leave off, like so many things.
Is it starting technically right there on the previous page? Those couple of words.
Yeah, I think we're starting from 46.
Yeah.
Starting at 46. فَأَرْسَلُوهُ. Huh?
بسم الله.
Okay.
فأرسلوه إليه فأتى يوسف فقال يا يوسف أيها الصديق الكثير الصدق أفتنا في 7 بقرات سمان.
الكثير الصدق, yeah, because that's a
الكثير الصدق.
صفة, yeah. Go ahead.
أفتنا في 7 بقرات سمان يأكلهن 7 عجاف و7 سنبلات خضر وأخرى يابسات لعلي أرجع إلى الناس أي الملك وأصحابه لعلهم يعلمون تعبيرها. Sorry, Sheikh, at what point do you want me to stop?
Yeah, from the beginning, yeah.
Okay.
The very beginning. فأرسلوه. فأرسلوه. No.
فأرسلوه. So he sent for him to the king, the man sent for Yusuf alayhi salam.
Yeah. فأرسلوه طبعا, that's a jama, so they sent him. So who's they?
So they sent the man.
The king and the official group, whoever they happen to have been, right? Okay. So they sent him to find out. Okay, and if you remember, we talked about there's a very, very long hadf here, right? Because they sent him, and then all of a sudden, yeah, Yusuf, So they just sent him, and a few seconds later, he's now talking to him. There was quite a long, quite a long list of things that took place before that happened, right? So that was all mahdoof, but obviously we can picture that, right? So he got ready, he left, he made the journey, and he reached to the prison, and he got in, and it was quite a lot of stuff. So that's a very sort of mashhur example of hadf, of not only hadf al kalima or jumal, or jumla, but there's hadf al jumal. A lot of sentences would have been mahdoof here. In spite of that, we still get the entire message, because the condition of hadf is that even though something is mahdoof, it is understood from the siyaq. Now, if we there's a thing which is called al-hadf al-mukhil. So if we إذا نحذف شيئا ثم المعنى لا يتبلور ولا يفهم, it becomes difficult to understand what's actually going on, which is what a lot of these mutun and these texts were written in the Middle Islamic ages. It's very difficult to understand exactly what they're talking about, because they've emitted so many things that it's hard. You don't even have a clue of what's really going on here. So that's not the case in the Quran. Whatever has been mahdoof, it's very easily understandable, with the condition that you understand the Arabic language thoroughly enough. Okay? Yeah. فَأَرْسِلُونَ يُوسُفُ أَيُّهَا الصِّدِّيقُ. Ajib. Got it? No. Okay. Carry on.
فأتى يوسف, so he came to Yusuf عليه السلام. فقال يا يوسف, O Yusuf, أيها الصديق, O you truthful man, al-kathir sidqi, plentiful in truthfulness.
Yeah, so that's basically the tafsir of Siddiq. Okay, I have a question. So how did he come up with that tafsir, kathir as-sidq? Where did he come up with that? Why is that the tafsir of Siddiq? Who knows?
Because the form is mubalagha.
Exactly. Because that's a sigha mubalagha, right? Siddiq is sigha mubalagha, which means, just as he said, kathir as-sidq. Okay, carry on.
أفتنا في سبع بقرات سمان يأكلهن سبع عجاف. So tell us the meaning of 7 fat cows being eaten by 7 lean ones. وسبع سنبلات خضر.
Yeah. And notice he says what? Aftina. Give us a fatwa. Right? So what he doesn't mean like a fatwa in the Shari sense, but fatwa basically is seeking an answer for things, That's what a fatwa is. We have a problem, we have an issue, we want an answer for that. So here we have an issue, somebody saw something, we want to see what's the answer to that? No? Yeah, go ahead.
وسبع سنبلات خضر وأخرى يابسات, and 7 green ears of corn, and 7 others that are withered.
Yeah. So it may not necessarily mean green corn, because corn I don't think is generally green, but the outside of it is.
Yeah.
But the outside of it kind of is. But anyway, what is inferred here probably is, ripe and fresh. Right? And so that's what usually greenness in vegetation, infers, right? So we've got these 7 fresh, green, luscious, and succulent corn, and then we have ukhar yabisat, dried up and withered up. Okay. Yeah, carry on.
لعلي أرجع إلى الناس أي الملك وأصحابه, so that I may return to the people, meaning the king and his his companions, his people. لعلهم يعلمون تعبيرها, so that they might know what this dream is indicating towards.
Yeah. And then of course, if they know what the dream means, and it would, and it has actually ta'bir, as we mentioned, which means if it has a ta'bir, it means something's going to happen, right? So then they take measures, accordingly. Okay. Khair.
قال تزرعون أي. Did I read this before? Okay. قال تزرعون أي ازرعوا 7 سنين دأبا بسكون الهمزة وفتحها متتابعة وهي تأويل سبع السمان فما حصدتم فذروه اتركوه في سنبله لئلا يفسد إلا قليلا مما تأكلون. I'm not sure what this word is, Sheikh, but
فدوسوه. Yeah.
فدوسوا.
No.
فدوسوه. وفي نسخة فدرسوه. ثم يأتي من بعد.
فدرسوه. نعم.
ثم يأتي من بعد ذلك. Or do you want me to stop here?
Yeah. Yeah, let's translate that.
قال تزرع. Yusuf alayhi salam, he said, you will plant. إزرعوا, the meaning being it's an amr. He's telling them to plant. 7 سنين دأبا, 7 years as usual. بسكون الهمزة وفتحها, with sukun on the hamza and a fatha as well, depending on the qira'ah. متبعة, sequentially, the 7 years. وهي تأويل السبع السمان, and that is the meaning of the 7 fat cows. ما حصدتم, so as for whatever you harvest in those 7 years, فذروه. فذروه اتركوه, So leave them في سنبله in their ears or their husks لئلا يفسد, so that they might not spoil.
Mhm.
قليلا مما تأكلون, except for the little which you eat. فدوسوه.
فدوسوه. Dasu, yani, actually it virtually means put it under your feet and crush it, you know. In other words, it's a kinaya on, you know, prepared for eating, right? So you wouldn't remove any of those from their ears or from their husks, except that which you're going to eat, you know. So then go ahead and prepare that and eat that, but make sure that it's, you know, a minimal amount, because you're going to have 7 tough years ahead that you're going to need to prepare for. Yeah. Okay.
ثم يأتي من بعد ذلك أي السبع المخصبات.
مخصبات. No.
مخصبات.
In أخصبة, يعني it'd be fertile. Yeah.
Wait.
مخصبات أي. Go ahead.
مخصبات سبع شداد مجدبات صعاب وهي تأويل السبع العجاف يأكلن ما قدمتم لهن من الحب المزروع في السنين المخصبات. أي تأكلونه فيهن إلا قليلا مما تحصنون تدخرون.
طيب.
So then after that, the 7 fertile years will come 7 harsh years that will be dry and difficult. وهي تأويل السبع العجاف, and that is the meaning of the 7 lean cows. يأكل ما قدمتم لهن.
They're not only lean, they're, you know, emaciated. Ijaf, you know. Yeah. Because being lean is, it could be
in good shape.
Yeah, it could be a positive attribute. Otherwise, these are really in bad shape, you know. Yeah.
يأكلن ما قدمتم لهن. You will consume whatever you put forth.
No. Yeah, kulna. Yeah, kulna.
So the 7 years will eat up?
Yeah.
So they will eat up whatever you put forth for them from the harvested grain. في السنين المخصبات, in those, for whatever you stored up in the.
Well, actually, قدمت لهن, it means what you've you know, stored up for those years to come. Hunna, those 7 sinin, right? For those difficult years to come. Yeah. Type.
أي تأكلونه فيهن, meaning that you will eat, you know, most of it within those years. إلا قليلا مما تحصنون, except for a little bit that you have stored up.
تدخرون, store. Yeah.
ثم يأتي من بعد ذلك أي السبع المجدبات عام فيه يغاث الناس بالمطر وفيه يعصرون الأعناب وغيرها به. And then after those, and then after those 7 years, the 7 years of drought, عام, there will come a year فيه يغاث الناس بالمطر, wherein the people will receive abundant rain. يعصرون الأعناب وغيرها, and in that they will press grapes.
What's the marja of the damir?
عام.
Yeah, exactly. So they will, you know, receive a lot of rain in that particular year, that year which is going to come. Yeah. After 14 years, which would be the 15th year. Yeah. Okay.
And they will press, or you will press grapes, or the people will press, you know, grapes and things of their liking, due to their being fertile and fresh.
Exactly. Okay, a couple of things here. So one is, there's Yusuf, when he was, he's going to actually later on, well, we'll probably talk about that when we get there, but no harm in mentioning it now, that when actually he's brought to the king, and he's, and he explains this whole thing, and then so the king, obviously, he needs somebody to, to make a plan for this and implement, and manage this whole, situation. So Yusuf alayhi salam, he presents himself. And that's generally going against what the general principle is in Sharia, which is, as Nabi alayhi mentions in riwayats, that those who are seeking positions, don't give them. We don't give them. And those who are running from the position, those are the ones that are, we should look for. And in other words, the people who don't desire worldly positions, you give the position, provided obviously that they're, people who are qualified for that. Okay. So is that a qaida mutarida? Is that a principle that should always be followed? So number one, if so, then this whole concept of democracy I think there's an M-O-C-K involved here in this democracy, There's an excellent video that one of my sons sent in our family group, we've got a family group that interesting things. So he sent this presentation, very, very aptly done, which it's just a scenario where, you have this plantation, and you've got these slaves working on the plantation, and they start, starting an uprising. So this fellow by the name of Mr. Smith is ushered in, and he's going to solve the problem. And basically what he does is he says, we're going to solve the problem here. And so he says, just gather all these slaves together and I'll address them. Okay, so what he does is that he tells the slaves that, well, the biggest problem is that probably because you're slaves. So we're going to make you free men, right? And we're going to give you the freedom of choice. And these guys get really, elated. Wow, that's great. And then he explains them. But of course, since you're only, workers, so you wouldn't really know how to run the plantation. So the owner of the plantation, let's keep him in charge for the meantime. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. And it goes on, and you can imagine, and so then what happens is that, when they start having issues, they hear, yeah, anybody wants to, voice their opinion, but we have rules and regulations. Anyway, the khulasa of the whole thing is very well done. And, then they have an election. You can also have an election if you don't think that, this guy's, you can have another. So you have either him, or you can choose his cousin or his brother, whichever one, So ultimately, one of them starts to understand what's going on here. It's just a play of words, and nobody's free or anything. It's just the same as it was. We've just used a lot of flowery language and trying to paint a deceptive picture that we're actually free and we have choice and all this kind of thing, when in fact, there's nothing of the kind, which has been my take of this whole democratic system for the past 50 years or more than that. So I never bought into it from the beginning, but people do. They think that this is and the people all over the world are beguiled into thinking that we actually make choices and we can, we choose our leaders and all this kind of thing. It's funny, you have only 2 people out of 200 million that are presented to you, choose, A or B, and it's 6 of one or half a dozen of the other. Right. And look at this last election. It's just such a farce, But anyway, people still, think this is the system, and we're free to choose this and that. But a lot of people are actually waking up to the whole thing. So in any case, one of the features of that is that the whole system works on people racing for positions. And look at the amount of money that's spent on that, and look at the amount of time that's wasted on that. And we could go off on an hour tangent on that, but we won't. But in any case, so Islam, the Islamic model is just like Abu Bakr. He presented Umar and Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah and said, okay, these are two muhajirin are supposed to, look after the khilafat, and so these are the two most suitable people. And so everybody said, no, absolutely not. As long as Abu Bakr is here, you're around, there's no way to think about anybody else. And so he doesn't want to really be put in that position at all, because people of taqwa know that being put in a position like that is going to be, muakhada. It's going to be accountability, responsibility and accountability. So, and we don't, we always would consider ourselves, below that. And also, we wouldn't be able to fulfill the rights of that, and so forth and so on. So now Yusuf alayhi salam is presenting himself, Ij'alni ala khaza'in al-ard, so this comes to a point in fiqh, which they've also been discussed in Sharia, that so generally people who are hankering after position, they've got vested interest generally. So that definitely we wouldn't want to put those people into power, because they're going to misuse it. And that's generally what happens, and pretty much 100% what goes on in today's politics. So, however, in the case where someone who is muttaqi and sees that this, because after all, the public office, to fill that public office is for the common benefit. Now, if that's filled by an incompetent person or a person with vested interest, then what's going to happen? The common hukuk are going to be squandered. So if a person who has that capacity and capability and sees that unless he presents himself, unless he takes that position, then what's going to happen is there's going to be a general, deficit, and there's going to be it's going to have negative impact, on society in general. So in this case, not only it would be permissible for him to present himself, but it may become a wajib for him to do so. So obviously, in this case, Yusuf alayhi salam being a prophet and having that, قَدْ عُلِّمَ التَّأْوِيلَ الْحَدِيث, and he, as he's already displayed, he's understanding what's going to be taking place, and with his amanat, his taqwa, and ta'alluq billah, and so forth and so on. So obviously, he would be, if not the only person capable of managing the affairs effectively and efficiently, but he would definitely be the best. So from that standpoint, okay, that's number one. So that comes under the heading of the masala. Is it permissible to present oneself for positions of authority and positions of, responsibility like that? Okay. Number two masala comes is that you can also see that this involves a long-term planning. We're talking about a 15-year plan, and that's a pretty good amount of time. So the question comes up, is this against tawakkul? Yeah, because if we have total tawakkul on Allah, then what's the point in planning anyway? Since everything is already planned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what's the point in planning? And some have actually advocated that one should not plan anything, period. That's going the other extreme, right? The material and the materialist stance would be everything needs to be, long, mid-term, short-term, very effective and efficient planning, and everything needs to go by the plan. Then the opposite, the antithesis of that would be total tawakkul with no planning whatsoever, since it's already been planned. What's the point? So here we see a 15-year plan put in place by none less than a prophet himself. So that tells us that planning is obviously permissible, and not only permissible, but it would be commendable. And that we also see Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, and we see very prolifically, we see Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu with this just amazing plans and the implementation of those plans. So how does that collide with tawakkul, or how do we reconciliate that? So we don't know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has planned. We know that whatever Allah has planned, that's what's going to happen. And part of the plan may well be that he's going to use us, to plan for his plan. You follow the point? So planning, is obviously, it's also, established here, and it's also established in the life of our Rasulullah. And he had plans, and the Khulafa al-Rashidin also used plans, and our ulama and aslaf have also planned, and they've been very effective and efficient in it as well. However, the difference between our planning and the materialist planning is that we plan with the total yaqeen that whatever Allah has planned is going to take place, regardless of what we planned or we haven't. Okay? And, it may well be that the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, has inspired us to come up with a plan that's, that is praiseworthy, shar'an, and it brings about, khair for people, then it's probably that this plan is actually a vision which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has implanted in someone's, mind, or has come up with. And so it's the manifestation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan will come through the plan that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave tawfiq for others to actually do it, which would also include them in the ajr process, right? So it's another form of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rahmah. Okay, that's one. The other thing is that planning, it will give us direction. When you have a plan in front of you, it gives you a direction, particularly if you're planning your day and your week and your month and your year, and so it will give you direction, and it will keep you from squandering your time, and that your minds will be wandering here and there. You've got a plan and you're following it. It gives you direction and focus. Now, with focus and direction, so we're headed. Now, we keep our eyes open, though, because we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the master plan. And so we keep our eyes and our minds open to see whether there's indications from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we need to, revise our plan, or we need to change our plan. And this is something where the Japanese are much better than the Americans. The Americans, they come up with a plan, they come up with a 10-year, 20-year, whatever plan. And regardless of what happens, they're going to carry out that plan until it just totally collapses, right? So we have a number of incidents that prove that point. Whereas the Japanese are more flexible in their planning. They plan, but they keep their eyes on. They have more, horizontal view than the Americans, And so what happens when opportunities come up, they don't miss them, or they try not to miss them. At the same time, when risks that were not pre-planned, start arising, or the signs of risk start arising, they're not, oblivious of that. So that's a little bit on planning, and there's a lot to be said on that, And planning basically stems from a vision. And so if we have a proper vision, which is connected to our ultimate purpose in life, and is connected with that purpose in life, and that vision would be, in fact, an intention. And I think we talked a little bit about that, perhaps in the beginning of the dars. And so the vision of a mu'min is nothing more or less than a niyat. So he has an intention. And if that is a good intention, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes, so as we mentioned, then it may very well be that that is actually the manifestation of something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to bring into existence through, individuals that he inspires them with that particular vision, that particular intention, and then further inspires them, give them tawfiq to plan effectively and efficiently for the realization of that. And so we have no issue with that. As a matter of fact, we would strongly encourage, may I and all of us, apply such tactics. Is that clear? We had in our masjid, so this hadith came, where somebody wanted actually so this whole discussion of someone who's looking for office, and there was a hadith that pointed to the fact that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would not give office to those who sought it. So we had one individual that got up and got all bent out of shape and had a problem with that. I don't know. He was maybe he's running for an office himself. I don't know what. Anyway, so he rose that thing, and they mentioned about Yusuf, and we said. So I mentioned that, yes, of course, The general rule is such, but obviously there is exceptions to every rule, and the exception would be that, and I explained that, you know, if that person sees that no one else is capable, you know, for the reasons that we mentioned, then that's fine. And not only might be it might be permissible, but as I mentioned, it might be wajib. In any case, apparently he got rubbed the wrong way and he wasn't satisfied. Allah give us all tawfiq and understanding. Okay, is that clear? Okay, that's a very critical, obvious, that's a very critical lesson that we need to learn from here. Okay, yeah, carry on.
وقال الملك لما جاءه الرسول وأخبره بتأويلها ائتوني به أي بالذي عبرها فلما جاءه أي يوسف الرسول وطلبه للخروج قال قاصدا إظهار براءته ارجع إلى ربك فاسأله أن يسأل ما بال حال النسوة اللاتي قطعن أيديهن إن ربي سيدي بكيدهن عليم. So the king said, قال الملك, when لما جاءه الرسول, when the messenger came to him back from Yusuf alayhi salam, وأخبره بتأويلها, and he informed him of the interpretation of the dream. ائتوني به, bring him to me. أي بالذي عبرها.
Yeah.
The one
so obviously the king was very impressed with his ta'wil, right? Yeah, this guy, he knows what he's talking about. Absolutely. So bring him. Yeah.
فلما جاءه أي يوسف الرسول وطلب للخروج. So when the Rasul came back to Yusuf alayhi salam and sought his removal from the prison, قال قاصدا إظهار براءته. Yusuf alayhi salam said, intending to make apparent his innocence, ارجع إلى ربك فاسأله, return to your Lord or Master, ask him, and يسأل ما بال حال, what happened to النسوة اللاتي قطعن أيديهن, the women who cut their hands. إن ربي سيدي بكيدهن عليم. Indeed, my Lord or Master is knowledgeable of their scheming, is aware.
Is well informed, yeah. Okay, so what's basically, in your own words, what basically transpired here?
My own words?
Yeah.
The man returned to the king with the interpretation from Yusuf alayhi salam of the dream, and the king, as you said, Sheikh, was impressed with his ta'wil, and so the king sent for Yusuf alayhi salam to speak to him personally. So when the man came back to Yusuf alayhi salam and asked for him to be released to prison so that he could be brought to the king, Yusuf alayhi salam wanted to first, declare his innocence and show that, he was not guilty of what he was said to have been guilty of. So he told him to go back to the king.
But basically, he refused to leave. So what do we understand from that, or what's the takeaway from that?
He was more concerned with, to some extent, his reputation.
You can imagine now, he was there for a number of years. Can you imagine this? And now no less than the king is saying, okay, come on, out, come on. Ukhruj.
So he's recognizing him for something, but he wants to be recognized for his innocence, firstly.
Yeah. So look at the standard, And in fact, in this instance, Nabi alayhi salatu has mentioned, Rahimullah Yusuf, that may Allah have mercy on Yusuf. Had I been asked, to leave, I wouldn't have thought about it. I would have just left, And of course, he said that tawadu'an, in humility, but just praising, the hazm of Sayyidina Yusuf, the expedience and the, what's the translation of hazm, judicious or whatever. I don't know, you know, this, what's the word that I would like to use here? I don't know. Who's got a good word for this? Hazm. It's, look up what do they translate hazm?
Resolute, firm.
Yeah, resolution, resolute, yeah, something like that. You know, otherwise, you know, can you imagine? You know, somebody said, all right, the king wants you. Oh, wouldn't think about it for a moment. He said, no, not until, you know, things are clear, that you know, everything, all that gray area is totally clarified, and you know, and I'm, you know. Now this brings up another thing, another issue, and that is that, do we care what people think about us? You often hear it doesn't matter what anybody thinks about it as long as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's true. However, Nabi has also mentioned that we you know, beware of those areas which might, you know, which might bring some unwarranted blame, you know, tuhma, you know, that you might be, you know, blamed, or you might be accused, places or situations that you might, it might trigger accusations, you know. For example, Nabi Sallallahu was talking to one of his wives in the night, you know, near the masjid, and somebody passed by and then, you know, sort of started walking quick. He said, wait, Allah Rislik, you know, wait, this is, you know, my wife, Safiya bint Huyay, you know. He said, Subhanallah, Ya Rasulullah. I mean, who would think otherwise, you know? But in any case, he's displaying that, you know, you never want to give, you know, the majal for shaitan to come up with, because why? It's not simply for his own honor, but since he's a Nabi and he's a Rasul, you know, so his honor, you know, the impact of any blemish on his honor, you can imagine what that would have, right? So, the preservation of one's honor, not for, you know, not mainly or primarily for the sake of one's honor for its own, you know, intrinsic sake, but for the greater good or the impact, you know, particularly people who are, you know, engaged in the work of deen or whatnot. And you can imagine, we've seen recent, you know, incidents where somebody who has a religious position and then they're rightly or wrongly accused of something, and then what impact that has. It's devastating, right? Not simply to the person involved, but more importantly, to the greater community, you know. So Yusuf alayhi salam, so naturally, if he's gonna, you know, if he's gonna come out and he's gonna be under the eye, and the king is, so obviously he's gonna be under the public eye. So before that happens, you know, he needs to have a totally clean slate, and the reality, you know, and the reality of that situation needs to come to light, because as we know, you know, people were talking all kinds of things, as they say in the street, you know, talking a lot of stuff, right? And the Niswa, they were all, you know, gossiping about the thing. And so so we know that there was talk around town, you know, about, you know, Yusuf alayhi salam and Zulaykha, and there was a lot of, you know, gossip floating around out there. Probably was still alive, or would come to life once again. So he needed to clear that whole, you know, arena before he would, you know, present himself. Okay.
Sorry, can you explain?
Extremely judicious, huh?
Sorry, can you explain how, like, why does he ask regarding the state of the woman? Like, how is that going to affect his reputation?
Now this is very interesting. Yeah, actually, what he means is, he doesn't mean the women, but more pointedly, he means what? Find out from Zulaykha what's the reality of that, you know? Because they put him in Sijin, so it apparently, even though the people high up knew that actually, you know, they knew that he was free from any, you know, foul play, but the common people, obviously, that the talk is around, right? So since he's been placed in prison, so it probably would appear to most of the people that he had to have something, you know, he had some hand in the you know, in some involvement in the thing. Otherwise, why would they put him in prison, right? So before you let me out, go and clarify this issue from the women. And it's interesting that he mentioned the women and he didn't say, find out from Zulaykha what the reality was and get that cleared up. She needs to, you know, come clean on that, you know. announce my barat. But it's also mentioned, it also is interesting, and they mention that in your Hashia, that he doesn't mention go ask Zulaykha. He says, go ask the women. So what nukta do we have here? What fine, delicate point can we deduce from the way in which he words this, or he brings the attention to this situation? Yeah.
Sure. Sorry, go ahead, Taylor.
I was to say he wanted to like avoid triggering, I guess, for lack of better words, the king by specifically calling out, you know, his wife, because it would have felt.
Actually, it wasn't the wife's. You know, it wasn't the wife of the king. It was actually the wife of the Aziz. So keep in mind that the king is, you know, he's the king. The Aziz was like probably something like a minister.
Okay.
Right. So. But in any case, yeah. So he doesn't want to point out a person, which is what is desirable sharan. We don't put the finger on someone specifically unless it's something which is necessary in the court of law or something, you know. So he didn't want to put the finger on Zulaykha, you know, unnecessarily, or, you know, yani, as we say, yani yafdaha, yani. He didn't want to bring her fadiha, you know, and expose her and sort of humiliate her. But he just he wants the truth to come out. So he mentioned the women, and as we know, that all those women got involved, and they know what the real story was as well, right? So if he starts asking around from those women who cut their arm, then ultimately the reality is going to come out that actually it was Zulaykha was, you know, rawadatu an nafsi wa innahu lamin as-sadiqin, right? So it's kind of like, you know, satr. So he was, you know, sort of concealing the identity so as not to unnecessarily expose anyone and put them into, you know, into a position of shame and humility unnecessarily, which was very noble on his, again, you know, right? And we might, as we see the tafsir coming later on, that we might see that how that impacted the response from Zulaykha herself. Yeah, carry on. Yeah.
فرجع فأخبر الملك فجمعهن قال ما خطبكن شأنكن إذ راوتن يوسف عن نفسه هل وجدتن منه ميلا إليكن قلنا حاش لله ما علمنا عليه من سوء قالت امرأة العزيز الآن حصحص وضح الحق أنا راودته عن نفسه وإنه لمن الصادقين في قوله هي راودتني عن نفسي فأخبر يوسف بذلك فقال ذلك أي طلب البراءة ليعلم العزيز أني لم أخنه في أهله بالغيب حال وأن الله لا يهدي كيد الخائنين ثم تواضع لله.
That we'll do later. Yeah. Let's translate this part.
So فرجع, so the man returned to the king once again, and he informed the king of what Yusuf alayhi salam was requested. The king gathered the women and he said, ما خطبكن, what is, you know, your story, شأنكن, your affair, or, you know, the reality of your affair. إذ راودتن يوسف عن نفسه, when you tried to seduce Yusuf alayhi salam. وجدتن منه ميلا إليكن, did you find any sort of inclination from him towards you? قلنا حاش لله, all of the women said, Allah forbid that. ما علمنا عليه من سوء, we did not find any sort of evil from him. قالت امرأة العزيز. So Sheikh, this al-an here, is this from the statement of Imra'atul Aziz, or is this the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So
no, this is a statement. Yeah. This is most likely the statement of Zulaykha. Al-an. Now she's coming clean.
Okay.
Right? And we mentioned, you know, earlier that he didn't actually put the blame squarely upon her. But she probably realized, you know, perhaps, I mean, this is mentioned in tafsir, and it's very plausible So it's like he didn't put the blame squarely on her, and she realized that that was a very honorable way of dealing with the situation, and a very noble way of trying to protect her and not mentioning her by name when it was very clear that she was the one behind the whole scheme. And so now she felt, as a reciprocating with that honorable act, then I should at least come clean and have that much honor and dignity to totally confess. Then she says, now the whole thing really has come to light, and it's me who actually, so she comes clean with the whole thing and totally admits that it was her, it was totally her, it was totally her idea, and she was the one who was guilty and not he in the least. You got it? Yeah. Now the whole thing is coming to light, and the truth has come out. I'm the one who was totally guilty of that, and I was the one who tried to seduce. He had nothing whatsoever to do, and he was least interested, and no moreover, he tried his best to save himself from that. Yeah. Okay, so let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back inshallah with the second half. Bidnillahi ta'ala. Subhanaka wa bihamdika. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Okay, so who would like to take the second segment?
I can take that, inshallah, Sheikh.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله والصلوات والسلام على رسول الله. قال المؤلف جلال الدين السيوطي رحمه الله ونفعنا بعلومه في الدارين. بسم الله. وما أبرئ نفسي من الزلزل إن النفس الجنس.
Okay, I think we need to. Did we
didn't
finish that?
The last leg of the
Yeah, I think we didn't finish that. Yeah, let's finish that.
Do you want me to finish it? Sheikh?
Yeah, Dalen, you finished that. Yeah.
So the wife of the Aziz, confessed that she was the one who seduced Yusuf alayhi salam, and she says, وَإِنَّهُ لَمِنَ الصَّادِقِينَ, and he was truthful. He was most certainly truthful. في قوله, and when he said, هي راودتني عن نفسي, she is the one who seduced me.
She was the one who tried to seduce me.
فأخبر يوسف بذلك.
She obviously didn't seduce because she wasn't successful. she tried to, yeah. She tried to, and she unsuccessfully, yeah.
فأخبر يوسف بذلك, and so Yusuf alayhi salam was informed of that, of her confession. فقال ذلك أي طلب البراءة, that meaning the seeking, or his seeking of his innocence, or the proclamation of his innocence, يعني ليعلم العزيز أني لم أخنه, so that the Aziz would know that I did not betray him في أهله, with his family, بالغيب, while he was not present. حال, so it's a hal.
In his absence and without his knowing, yeah.
وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي كَيْدَ الْخَائِنِينَ, and Allah does not guide the plan of the dishonest. ثُمَّ وَضَعَ لِلَّهِ, and then he humbled himself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he said,
which Sarah will continue. Okay, now, so that's that tafsir, which is obviously is stating that was the statement of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, right? Okay. Now, there's another tafsir that mentioned that this is actually a continuation of the statement of Zulaykha. That she said actually that ذَلِكَ لِيَعْلَمْ, and I've said so, and I actually, came clean and, took the total blame so that he would know, that Yusuf alayhi salam would know that I, wouldn't betray him. And I tried that already once, but now I've come totally clean, and now I wouldn't, I want him to, said you should know that I'm not going to, resort to some sort of treachery behind his back, and barely she also came to the realization that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not guide the plot or the machinations of the treacherous. However, what is mentioned there is probably more manifest and is more preferred, and that's certainly the tafsir that is the statement of Sayyidina Yusuf, right? No. Okay. وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي. No. So having said that, so this statement obviously could be either way also. Probably it's a saying of Sayyidina Yusuf, but there's also a saying that it might have been the continuation of the statement of Zulaykha. Now, carry on. وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي. Yeah, go ahead.
بسم الله. وما أبرئ نفسي من الزلل إن النفس الجنس الأمارة كثير الأمر بالسوء إلا ما بمعنى من رحم ربي فعصمه إن ربي غفور رحيم. So I don't seek to free myself from blame, من الزلل, from mistakes. In nafsi,
and what does zalal actually mean, in linguistically?
is it like slipping or shortcoming?
Exactly. Slip. And a zalal. So when somebody slips, their foot slips, what happens? They fall. Right? So that has become a kinaya for, you know, making blunders or mistakes or, you know, misjudgment, etc. So these are called zalal, whereas the original thing is slips. Right? So I don't feel myself from having slipped or blundered or miscalculating or whatever. Inna nafs, no.
Inna nafsa, like indeed the human, just referring to the human nafs, al-jins, al-ammaratu, like the nafs that pushes a person to do wrong. Kathiratul amri bisu'i, like very much commanding them to do wrong. Illa ma, except for bima'na man whom rahima rabbi, whom my Rabb, my Lord, has mercy on.
Okay. So in your own words, what's basically being said here? What's
basically
the concept?
That I'm not gonna like fully like I'm not gonna try and say I'm not completely innocent, but I'm not gonna free myself from blame because human beings
I
make
won't
mistakes.
exonerate myself. Not exonerating myself.
Like if it's Yusuf alayhi salam, then he's being humble
Exactly.
before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if it's the lady, then she's also just being humble in a way and saying that, you know, I'm at Allah's mercy, basically.
Yeah, in her case, it's probably more about truthfulness rather than humility. Although she has obviously been humbled now, so that's true. Yeah. Okay.
So Allah protects them. Inna Rabbi ghafurun
Okay, now
rahim.
one thing I just want to bring out here is that inna nafs, an-nafs. So this alif lam, as we said before, alif lam can be lil ahad, it can be lil jins. So which one is it here?
It says lil jins.
Exactly. So the human, you know, the nafs, and actually nafs, you know, usually they translate it as ego, but that's again, you know, it's not just ego. Ego is part of the nafs, you know, but but the nafs is actually an entity which is not seen. Doesn't have a physical, you know, as we understand a physical definition or delineation that we can, you know, say, okay, this is the nafs, here it is, there it is, and that's how it is, that's its shape, its color, its taste, etc. But it is an abstract, you know, in essence, an abstract essence that we don't, you know a lot about. But we do know this much, that this is the characteristic. The general characteristic of nafs is ammaratun bisu. That's its natural disposition. Okay. Then you have also a mention of nafs al-lawwama. La uqsimu bi yawm wa la uqsimu bi an-nafs al-lawwama. And so they mention that this is the nafs which, you know, blames, you know, continuously blames when we, you know, fall into shortcomings in zalal. So this is another, you know, dimension of the nafs, and probably this is the nafs of someone who has a higher religious status. So the human being left alone with his nafs, so that nafs is going to generally, without proper tarbiyah and without, you know, without refinement, it's going to be simply nafs al-ammara bis-su. And with a bit of tarbiyah and a bit of effort, it becomes lawwama. So that nafs, you know, it takes on a characteristic of actually pointing out and blaming, you know, when sahib al-nafs, you know, gets off the track. Now, if this process of tarbiyah and upbringing continues, then ultimately the nafs becomes mutmainna. And when we read about, you know, the great, you know, awliya and people who have really attained, you know, just the supreme, you know, spiritual states, so, you know, their nafs would be they have sort of morphed into a different characteristic, which would be mutmainna. It becomes subdued to basically, you know, follow along with the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the person is not going to give in. So that requires, it's like an unruly horse. I don't know, I think somebody was into horses. I remember correctly.
Muna.
Huh?
It's Muna.
Muna. Oh, she's into horses. Yeah. So she would know that, horses, when you first start out, they are, ammaratun bisu. And ultimately, they don't become mutmainna until, you really have to train them. You really have to break their will, and you really have to get them, under your jurisdiction, and through your very wise and consistent and wise training. So similarly, the nafs is like that. Okay.
Mhm.
So the nafs is so that is what is saying the nafs. He's talking about the nafs al-ammara, in the mustalahat, or the technical terms. Yeah. You had something to say?
No, I was going to continue. Sorry.
Okay, so now there's another thing here. Illa ma, he says, bimana men. So in that case, except for the one who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows special mercy to. Now, can we keep ma as ma? Is there another way that we could sort of explain that?
That's what I was going to ask, Sheikh, because that's how I originally had read it, was not men, but like as much as, or whatever amount that Allah, gives mercy.
So it also could be, as is mentioned in your hashia, it could also be, it could also be dharfiyah, except for, what, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows in terms of his rahmah, which would be a time or instance or the situation where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows his special mercy. So in that case, ma would remain ala babiha. Got it?
Mm-hmm.
So that's another possibility. No. And of course, it's not one is right, one is wrong. The both of them are, as we mentioned, when we have various tafsir, generally they are what we call tafsir at-tanawwu. A tafsir bi-naw', hadha naw' wa hadha naw'. So both are obviously, both are, applicable, and both are pertinent. Okay? Wallahu a'lam. Carry on.
Bismillah. Surely my Lord is all forgiving and most merciful.
Yeah.
Bismillah. وقال الملك آتوني به
أستخلصه لنفسي.
أستخلصه لنفسي أجعله خالصا لي دون شريك فجاءه الرسول وقال أجب الملك.
نعم.
أجب الملك. So the king said, bring him to me, so that I may أستخلصه, like exclusively employ him لنفسي, for me. أجعله خالصا.
I want this guy to work for me and me alone, right? Yeah, I want him totally for me. Yeah, which is the affair of kings. Obviously, when they see capable people, or anyone, king or CEO or president or whoever, when you see somebody that's really competent, you want to take maximum benefit, and you would want them to work for you and you alone. Otherwise, there's going to be some of their capacity is going to be dissipated, right? So I want him totally to be focused on my issue, on my issues here. Okay. أجعله خالصا لي. نعم.
دون شريك. فجاءه الرسول وقال, so that messenger or that Saqi guy came back to him and said, answer and respond to the king. فقام وودع أهل السجن.
Whether that was the Saqi or somebody else, we don't really know. But anyway, the Rasul, whoever that might have been. Messenger. Yeah. Maybe it was him, maybe somebody else. Okay, good.
فقام وودع أهل السجن ودعا له.
وودع أهل السجن ودعا لهم. نعم.
ودعا لهم ثم اغتسل ولبس ثيابا حسنا ودخل عليه. حسانا ودخل عليه فلما كلمه قال له إنك اليوم لدينا مكين أمين.
مكين أمين.
So he.
But just finish that. ذو مكانة.
Oh, ذو مكانة وأمانة على أمرنا.
No. طيب.
فماذا
Okay,
ترى
أن No. Just up to there, yeah.
So فقام, he got up and وودع, and like said his goodbyes to the people of
his farewell or whatever, yeah.
ودع لهم, so he like made dua for them. ثم اغتسل, and he bathed and wore ثيابا حسانا, like good clothing. ودخل عليها, and he, meaning he left it.
ودخل عليه.
So he came to the king?
Yeah, عليه. Entered in, دخل عليه, دخل على فلان, we went to him basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
فلما كلمه.
Obviously the usage is peculiar to Arabic, دخل عليه. He entered upon him, but you don't actually, in English, we don't use that kind of usage, right? Yeah.
فلما كلمه, so when Yusuf alayhi salam spoke to the king, he said to him.
Okay, now wait a minute. What do you think about all of that? For ودع أهل السجن ودعا لهم واغتسل ولبس ثيابا حسانا ودخل. So, what's your take on all of that?
Well, I mean, for one, he spent extended amount of time there, so I'm assuming that in his time he probably told people about, Tawheed and established relationships with the people there. So it's also like when you leave the people, you're leaving people that you spent. I mean, assuming if these people were there with him that long, but you're leaving people you spent much time with. So he probably wanted to leave them with a good word. I'm assuming that's Tawheed.
So anyway, so he's mentioning specifically that he bid farewell to them and he prayed for them, and then he took a ghusl and prayed. So all of those things, obviously, we've mentioned many times already. So since those tafasil are not mentioned in the Quran, they're also, we're not aware of any marfu' from Nabi alayhi salatu that took place. However, as you mentioned, it's probably, it's very suitable that he would have done all those things. There's no doubt about that, but actually that happened or not, who knows,
Yeah.
So perhaps if the Mufassir might have said, and probably he would have such and such and such and such, then, but making a statement that that's what he did, so obviously we would say, well, how do you know that that's exactly what he did? And in any case, but it's very, very likely that these things took place. I would only have that he will labisa thiyaban hasanan, so where did he get the good clothing to put on? I don't know. But anyway, so obviously these are points that really don't have any relevance in terms of the lessons to be learned. Other than the lesson of, the general kindness or the general, courtesy and the general concern that one would have, for humanity, even be they people of the Sijin. Maybe that's the point that he wanted to make, the Mufassir, that if this in fact took place, but probably something of that nature happened. At the same time, Labisa Thiyaban Hisanan. So there was an interesting story that is similar to that there was a person by the name of Ashaj al-Asri. He came with one of the delegates from Abdul Qais. It was a tribe of the Arabs, and you might have read this in Sirah, or you'll read this in books of Hadith in any case. And so when they came to Rasulullah, they just jumped off their camels and left them and just rushed, to meet Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay, so Ashaj Abdul Qais, he was a bit more hazim, as we said, resolute and judicious in his actions. So what he did was, he didn't just rush off to see Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He actually took a ghusl, he put on the best clothes that he had available, made himself very presentable, and then he came to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam appreciated that and mentioned that he has anat, He has hilm and he has anat, two characteristics which Allah loves, al-hilm wal-anat. Take one's time and don't, rush, into things. Because the saying also goes, al-ajla min ash-shaytan wa ta'anni min ar-rahman. So taking one's time and acting judiciously is ilham from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and acting hastily is generally from the onslaught of shaitan and his pushing and prodding. Okay, anyway, so that took place or not, wallahu alam. But it sounds good anyway. Sounds very plausible. Yeah. Khair.
فلما كلمه, so when Yusuf alayhi salam spoke to the king, قال, the king said to him, إنك اليوم لدينا مكين أمين. So today you are
yeah, so we want to give the innaka, we want to give the sense of that inna also. So what would we say here?
Like without question, you today are
indeed, very verily, yeah, something like that.
Like makinun, in a high status or high position, and amin.
Yeah, he was actually from Makkana, Makin, Makkanahu fa asbaha makinan. So you have been, you have been placed, in such a way that you're fully capable of doing things. Tamakkana fi shay, he's established himself, to be able to function, and do things, and carry out what he wants to do, right? So you are makinun, because the king makkanahu, yani makkanahu al-malak fa asbaha makinan, right? So in other words, I've given you authority and I've given you sound position, that you can exercise, and amin. How would you translate that?
Trust. Like trusted by us?
Amanatan ala amrina. So your amanatan min amrina, that's what, if you would have said that, then that's what you just mentioned basically. But when you said amanatan ala amrina.
Over our affairs.
Yeah. So it's like even before Yusuf, says, who's going to take, I'll take care of your affairs, was he was probably hinting that, we have plans for you to look after these, since you've displayed such, such talent, and you've displayed such, capacity, capability. So we're going to put you in charge. And when we say somebody's amin, they have been placed, given charge and authority over something, and those affairs are an amanat in their hand, That's why we call Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah radiallahu anhu amin al-ummah, because Nabi used to put many of the affairs, the financial, etc., in his hand, Okay.
Would a good word then be like entrusted?
Something like that. Right. Okay.
فماذا ترى أن نفعل? So what do you think that we will do? قال
ماذا ترى? So
what do you envision or see that we will do?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. فماذا ترى أن نفعل? So what do you see that we should do? What's your opinion? What do you think we should do? What do you see that we should do? Basically, literally, what do you see that we should do? Yeah. Call.
Like, is it like, where do you see yourself, or
no? What should we do?
Okay.
ماذا ترى أن نفعل? What's your opinion? What's your رأي? What's your opinion? What's your view as to what we should do?
So قال, and this is Yusuf then عليه السلام. قال اجمع الطعام وازرع زرعا كثيرا في هذه السنين المخصبة وادخر الطعام في سنبله فيأتي إليك الخلق ليمتروا منك. So he said, gather and collect all the food like harvest the crops, so harvest many
وزرع
crops.
زرعا كثيرا. No, not harvest. وزرع.
I'm sorry, so plant.
Before you can harvest, you have to زرع. يعني من
So
زرع
there's no-
حصد. Have you ever heard that?
No.
من زرع حصد. بالصاد. If you do zara, then you get hasid. So you won't harvest until you plant. So he's telling you what?
Plant your seeds.
Yeah.
Many seeds in this year of a fertile, in this fertile year.
These fertile years. Yeah.
In these fertile, right, the 7 years. And وَالدَّخِرَ الطَّعَامَ, and store your food and grains في سنبله, in its like the spikes, the grain spikes.
The spikes, or if it was grain, if it was corn, then in the cobs of the corn, yeah, corn, or in the stalks, yeah, whatever. No.
فيأتي إليك الخلق ليمتاروا منك. So all the people will come to you to purchase from you.
Yeah. Al-mira is, their provisions. So people will come and so what's he basically saying here is that if we just, if we don't control things, that the market is going to really be disturbed. There's going to be hoarding, and there's going to be a lot of shenanigans going on, basically. So what we need to do is we need to gather up and take authority and responsibly distribute, rather than just throwing out there in the market and let people play around the market, play games. So we're going to control its distribution. People will come and buy, but they'll buy from the state in a controlled way that's going to be beneficial for everybody. Perhaps, a certain amount, and which is we're going to see from when the Ikhwa Yusuf come, for every person they allow so much, and it would have its own purchase price. Or otherwise, people would hoard, and then probably inflation would have taken place, and there would have been a lot of. So that takes us to another masala. Can the government actually place pricing, what we call tas'ir? And there's another, important masala. Can the, like the communists, they just, the communist concept is you just regulate the market, and the market is really owned by you, and you do everything, So that's kind of what the situation he's talking about here. That the state is going to regulate, the market, at least for these items, for the food items, for the grain. And then you have the totally unregulated capitalist approach, was just let the market, do what it wants to do, And so what's the Islamic, stance on that? Do we just give the market a free hand, to let market dynamics dictate everything, regardless of any plotting or conniving or otherwise, or do we take total control of the market and we regulate the market totally and put prices on things, what we call tas'ir, even the placing of prices by the government on items, even though they're not controlling the market, but controlling the pricing. Is this legal or not? And once there was a situation in the market in Medina where the prices got very expensive for certain commodities. So they came to Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam and said, Allah tusa'ir lana. Well, you're not, fix the prices. I mean, it's getting out of hand here. So why don't you fix the price so that, and so Nabi Sallallahu mentioned, Allahu al-Musa'ir. So it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, market dynamics, supply and demand. That's what, basically runs the market, right? And that supply and demand is a situation which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings about. So let it play out its, its natural course. And that's actually more healthy for the markets. Let it, let market forces decide the price of it. Provided there's not, ulterior motives involved here. And so therefore hoarding is impermissible, and what we call a riba al-fahish, charging these exorbitant profits, even though you can't fix a profit margin, but unjustly charging just simply because you have the situation in which you can charge whatever you want and you're taking undue advantage. So this is highly discouraged and frowned upon. So there's basic rules and regulations that that would keep market forces under control. Not getting the evil hand wouldn't enter into transactions. Now, if it comes to light that there is such type of things going on, there is hoarding going on, or there's, for example, the people of a particular market, form a confederation, say, okay, let's charge 1,000 times profit on this thing, and nobody's going to charge less, right? So they make a decision which is going to be detrimental to the public. So in these cases, then the government has the authority to come in and actually set the prices. Okay. So on the one hand, what Yusuf alayhi salam is probably an expediency, even though perhaps that hasn't taken place yet, because generally we wouldn't enter into regulating the market until we found that actually forces were there trying to corrupt it, or corrupt practices were taking place. But in this case, perhaps Yusuf alayhi salam, with his foresight and being a prophet, as he was, he could foresee that things are going to get out of control. So we need to have a total control on that. And then, of course, then the masala of, well, is the Sharia of former peoples the Sharia for us? And the basic answer is that the basic principles are similar, but the Sharia, which has been, for former peoples, does not necessarily mean that that's going to be Sharia for us. And then there's another opinion that yes, it will be, provided there is not a nasikh, or there's not a clear text that it stipulates or shows that is no longer, is no longer applicable, or it's mansukh. So is that clear?
Yeah.
So what we see here is we see a control of the market, at least in the item of grain. Probably only the item of grain, because that's the thing that's going to, in foodstuffs. And actually, foodstuff is also the bone of contention in hoarding. For example, if you buy air conditioners in the wintertime and keep them with you until summer, and then the price goes up, is there anything wrong with that? So hoarding, is not permissible in things which people have its basic needs, which an air conditioner probably isn't. Okay. And similarly, like refrigerators or something, people want to buy those in the summertime, or heaters or whatever. So foodstuffs, things that people need all the time, so the state, so we see from that he took control of the grain, and so that wouldn't be considered, a control of the state, in a general sense, but in a specific sense, in a specific instance, which required the state to take that action. So, and we also, that is the Islamic stance also, that the state will not interfere in the market until it sees that the market is, exercising foul play, and then it has the authority to do so. The problem is these days, both sides are foul playing, so it's pretty, the whole thing is pretty upset. Yeah, Allah help us.
I mean, in terms of like times of difficulty, hurricane or drought or famine, etc. So we take the stance that you don't hoard basic necessities. You just kind of take it day by day.
Well, to store up things for your own personal use is a different thing. The type of hoarding, what we call iddikhar, this is actually storing up commodities until the price rises so that you sell it at a higher rate.
Okay.
Which has a double blow on society. Number one, hoarding, it's not going to be available, and number two, when he does make it available, it's going to be higher priced. So, but you want to store up, you want to store up things up for your own, personal usage. So this is not forbidden. And Nabi Sallallahu also, in the end of his life, also displayed that that's also jawaz, because he used to store up, 1 year's provision of grain or dates or something like that for his families, just to show that probably that's okay. Whereas for his own personal usage or his own personal sunnat was he wouldn't keep anything with him for until the night, right? Particularly if it was connected with other people's rights. So yes, it's permissible, but again, we have to look at the akhlaqi standpoint of it, So you're hoarding up, all this stuff. Is that going to, impact others that they're not going to find it? Like what happened in this COVID thing, everybody jumps down and just, after a while, then this whole thing started before I left here and went back to Pakistan. So I wanted to buy some vitamin C. There was no vitamin C anywhere. It was full of everything else, but vitamin C was totally gone because somebody threw out that thing that vitamin C is good for your immune system, and it was gone. Yeah. So it means that people are going down there buying, sharp shopping carts full of vitamin C or whatever. So, is that called ithar yani lil akhirin or ithar lil nafs? So yuthirun ala anfusihim walau kana bihim khasasa. So the Islamic, from an akhlaqi point, and keep in mind, there are what we call jawaz yani diyanatan or jawaz qada'an. I don't know if you've heard this term before or not. Something we might say this is wajib diyanatan. In other words, from an akhlaqi standpoint, from a behavioral or from a character standpoint, this is absolutely necessary. For example, a woman, shar'an, if it comes to the qadi, is she obliged to serve her husband? So actually, according to Sharia, she's not obliged to do that. It's not like a wajib that she has to do. But if she would like to see the marriage continue, I think she probably would like to do that. Otherwise, is also not shar'an for the husband to keep her. And it's pretty much what we call wajib diyanatan. So it's expected that the woman is going to, carry out certain functions, and when she does so, then that creates harmony and so forth and so on. However, if it goes to the qadi, he can't force her to do that. So there's certain things which the Sharia doesn't force, but character and good ethics, would dictate that type of behavior. Got it? So though it's legal for us to stock up and store, but at the expense that other people are going to be put into trouble because they won't find anything, it's going to impact others. There won't be availability for others. So was that something we would want to do? And obviously, if it came to the point where it's really impacting people, and to the extent that it's really affecting their lives, so obviously the Islamic State would want to enter into that and control that. They wouldn't let the public just go on and just ransack the shops, and nobody would. So they would want to have an equitable control over that. When necessary, again. Otherwise, the mizaj of Islam, or the nature of Islam, is to let the market, let it play out according to the organic, market forces. Right? Wallahu a'lam. Carry on.
Bismillah. فقال من لي بهذا. So this is the king saying, like, who would do this? Who can do this for me? قال يوسف اجعلني على خزائن الأرض.
Okay, if this conversation actually took place, again, we'll say the same thing here. Did that actual conversation take place? Wallahu alam. In any case, if it did, so man li biha, who's going to do this? He's already pointed to the fact that he's brought him for that purpose, right? Innaka al-yawma ladaina makinun amin. So it's like he's already, sort of inferring that, this is what I want you to do. I brought you here for this purpose. Khair. So, and again, we mentioned here that ijalni ala khaza'in al-ard. We mentioned that earlier. So here we have Yusuf alayhi salam nominating himself, which is not, generally the practice that we would like to see. We wouldn't like to put ourselves forward for positions, unless, like in this case, you're the one. You definitely think that you're the one that can do that, and if not, if you don't take that responsibility, then it will have a negative impact. on society in general. Khair.
إني حفيظ عليم. Indeed, I am like watchful and knowledgeable, or like reliable and knowledgeable. ذو حفظ وعلم. I don't know why the word competent came to mind, but like competent and knowledgeable. بأمرها وقيل.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you have proper knowledge about, it would be a comprehensive knowledge that would make him competent. Exactly. And hifth would have a connection with amana, So I'm Amin and I'm Alim, And I will take, preserve things. I know how to do that, and I'm trustworthy to do so. And obviously, someone would say that's kind of, praising oneself. It's just stating the facts here. It's not a question of praising oneself. He's explaining why he would be the correct choice. Naam?
وقيل كاتب وحاسب.
So from that, we can also understand that this is permissible in where it's necessary, which is like in this situation. Otherwise, we don't praise ourselves or mention our good points. If anything, we constantly look at our weaknesses and our faults and look at the good in others, right? However, in this instance, it's required because this is a position of authority. It requires, and if we know that we have those qualities, and it are those qualities that Allah has given us, knowing full well that it is Allah has done that. It's not my greatness or my goodness or my kamal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me that, and so I need to, thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by utilizing it properly. And so this is what we basically have here. Right?
Could we say it's like akin to like our resumes?
Yeah, like but usually the resume is, people, state these things in resume out of humility or out of matter of fact, or trying to get, to get there. I mean, I don't have a problem with the resume, but there's when you're applying for a job or whatnot, then obviously they need to know what you can do, and what's your experience and how qualified and how competent, what's your level of competency, and that's supposed to, describe that. But obviously from a Muslim standpoint, I don't see any problem with that, and that would be necessary also. But obviously you would want to be 100% truthful with that. You don't want to sell yourself as someone that you're not. Right?
No.
And don't sell yourself short also. No. Okay.
وقيل كاتب وحاسب, and there's it is said that it can also mean to be like he can record and take account of these things. وكذلك,
and that you would say also, and that would be part of it in any case, right? Yeah. And we mentioned again in tafsir, we mentioned various things are mentioned, and usually they're complementary to one another rather than being contradictory to one another. So that was complementary. So kitaba and hisaba is obviously part of that whole scenario of being hafidun alim, no doubt. Yeah.
وكذلك كإنعامنا عليه بالخلاص من السجن مكنا ليوسف في الأرض أرض مصر أرض مصر يتبوأ ينزل منها حيث يشاء بعد الضيق
والحبس.
بعد الضيق والحبس.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah.
وكذلك, and just as we have favored or have favored him, or have
or we have given him that great, sort of favor and benefit. Or how would you say ni'ma, in'am,
blessings?
What's the word I want? Yeah, who's good in English? Yeah, no harm to help out here. Huh?
It said something more like a gift, something given, just.
Yeah, in other words, in'am is giving someone a ni'ma. To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his in'am is granting the ni'ma. And what ni'ma, how do they translate ni'ma? What's a good word for ni'ma?
Favors, benefits.
Favors, blessings, benefits. I think all of it that's implied there, yeah. right? So, yeah, carry on.
عليه بخلاص من السجن, like upon him by freeing him from the jail. مكنا ليوسف في الأرض, so we established Yusuf on the land or in that society. أرض مصر, in the land of Egypt. يتبوأ ينزل, actually wait, I didn't get a word for يتبوأ. ينزل منها حيث يشاء. So
again, English, I don't know how you would explain this, but يتبوأ, in other words, he's free to move around and operate wherever he wants. وينزل, he can get, basically it literally means ينزل, and he gets down. So in other words, when you're going from place to place, you get down off of your camel or your horse or your car or whatever, and you get down in that place. That's why they call it nuzul. And that's why you call it a manzil, the place where you stay, that's where you get down and you actually stay there. So in other words, after being in the sijin, being, confined to this one little small area for years, now he's able to go anywhere he wants, free to go and enter into any place he wants with the official stamp and seal as well, right? Okay. So having said that, yeah. Okay, so having said that, we've now gone past our time. So inshallah, we'll start from here. And I'm going to make a little mark here so that okay, well, fi qissati, we got some kalam here also. Fi qissati. Yeah. Okay, so from there we will go, inshallah. So let's try and go up to فَصُرِفُوا إِلَى يُوسُف لِتَفْتِيشِ هَوِيَّتِهِمْ. Yeah. So 352, the second paragraph, okay? That should work, inshallah. Got it? Okay. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله
ورحمة الله وبركاته.